Hey, this is Joe. Thanks for coming back. In this video, we're going to show you how to skin a part with carbon fiber. What we have here is a cover for a tail light assembly. It's made out of plastic, more than likely ABS plastic, and we have a single sheet of carbon fiber. If you look really closely, I just cut this piece of carbon fiber off of a roll. And as you can tell, it's already starting to fray. The problem with working with carbon fiber, because in a lot of cases the decorative carbon fiber is a weave, and it unfrays. Some of it is stitched, and a lot of it, when you cut it, you lose the stitching, so it immediately starts to fray. When you start trying to shape it over your part, it's going to fray some more. And when you want a decorative part made out of carbon fiber, you don't want any fray marks in your carbon fiber. So I'm going to show you a little trick here that you can use to keep the carbon from fraying. What we want to do is we want to look at both sides of the carbon, and we want to pick the nicest looking side. So we're going to pick the nicest looking side. We're going to put face down on this flat surface. What we're then going to take is some Gorilla Spray adhesive. This is clear. It dries in about 3 to 5 minutes, and what we're going to do is we're going to spray on the back side of this carbon fiber. We're going to spray a coating, a light coating on this, and then after it cures, takes about 5 minutes, we can then take a pair of scissors and very easily cut out the shape we want for this tail light cover. And it won't fray. It will continue to be flexible. You can shape it across the part here, and all of the fibers will stay lightly together, and it will not fray. So let's go ahead and spray some of that adhesive onto this carbon fiber, and then I'll show you how we're going to cut it and how we're going to shape it on the tail light assembly. What we're going to do now is just come in and we're going to spray just a light coating of the adhesive across the entire sheet or ply of carbon fiber. Let's go ahead and let that cure now for 5 minutes. In the meantime, I'm going to show you how we're going to take this cover, make a template, so we can then trim the carbon fiber to fit the shape of the tail light assembly. What I've done here is taken some ducting tape. You can pick this up at the local hardware store, and I put 2 plies down to cover the entire shape that I want to use as a template for my carbon fiber, and I've come along and pressed the edges very firmly. And now what I'm going to do is take an X-Acto knife and I'm going to trim off the edges, which will then leave me a nice shape of the tail light cover. We will then peel that off, put it on a piece of cardstock, then we can cut that out and use that as a template to trim our carbon fiber down to size. We've now taken the X-Acto knife and we've trimmed around the tail light assembly, and it's okay if a little bit extra gets left hanging over the edge. After the resin cures on the carbon, we can take a Dremel tool and very gently sand the edges of that without hitting the plastic. So let's go ahead and now transfer this metal tape to a piece of cardstock, and then we'll trim that out. We very gently peeled the metal tape off of the tail assembly, and as you've seen here, I've taken some liberty to expand the line a little bit where the tape did tear, and you have to be very careful when you're peeling not to tear the tape because it is very thin. And what you want to do is you want to cut, when you cut out this template, you want to cut it out just slightly bigger than what's marked, and that way you can come in and lay the template on top of the taillight assembly, and then if necessary make any trims. You want as smooth of a line as possible, and then we'll see how that fits on the taillight assembly, and then we can come in and then use that template to trim out our carbon. But again, you can always use this just as a guide. Cut slightly bigger than your lines, because again, you can come in with either an X-Acto knife or a very sharp pair of scissors and do some finish trimming. We've now taken a pair of scissors and the X-Acto knife, and we've trimmed out the template on a vanilla folder or manila folder. And so now we can take this template. Carbon is starting, it's actually it's not tacky at all. We can now put the template on top of the carbon, and we can now trim out using a pair of scissors or an X-Acto knife, and we can then get our shape of our carbon fiber to match the template or the taillight assembly. And again, cut the fabric or the carbon fiber just slightly larger, because after you resin the carbon fiber to the taillight assembly and it cures, you can come in with a Dremel tool and a sanding drum and lightly remove and shape the carbon to exactly fit the taillight assembly. We now have the carbon fiber ply trimmed. I use the X-Acto knife to do this, and again, there's a slight hangover from the taillight assembly, but that's good. So what we're going to do now is we're going to set the carbon ply aside for the time being. We're going to take some 100 grit sandpaper, and we're going to go outside and we're going to lightly abrade this surface exactly where the carbon fiber is going to be laid up on the taillight assembly. You want a braided surface so the resin will stick to the plastic. The resin system that we're going to be using is from West Systems, and it's called G-Flex. It's made for plastic materials, and when it cures very strong, but there's a bit of flex in the cured surface of the resin. And because this is plastic and it's going to be on the tail light, this doesn't flex too much, but we want a nice surface for the resin to grab onto that carbon fiber. So what we're going to do is go outside. We're going to rough up the surface, then we're going to come back, we're going to mix up some resin, and we're going to lightly coat the taillight assembly with some resin. We're going to come in and we're also going to mask with some blue masking tape around the edges where we don't want the resin to get onto the plastic of the taillight assembly. So let's get this sanded. We have the tail light assembly taped up, so we don't want to get any resin on any of the surrounding areas. We just want to get resin here just on the curved portion on the flat surface. So we have that all taped and masks. Now what we can do is we're going to mix up probably about 15-20 grams of resin. The G-Flex is a 1-to-1 ratio, so we're going to do let's say 7.5 grams of one resin, the part A, and 7.5 grams of part B. And then we're going to come along and we're going to coat the surface of the taillight assembly. And then what we're going to do is we're going to let this start to tack up. It's going to probably take about 3 hours. And after it tacks up, then we can come in and we can lay the carbon fiber ply on top of the taillight assembly and have it bond down to it. And we want to take a stick of some sort, plastic or wood, and gently press down to make sure we get a good bond and no bubbles, no little folds or pleats in the carbon. So let's go ahead and mix up the resin, and let's apply the resin, and then we'll let it start tacking up, probably about 3 hours.